Hi, good afternoon. It's Jim from maverickstar Observatory. Very warm welcome to you. Guys, I know it's been a few days since I've done a video, but I've been getting over the effects of COVID-19. I suppose I can't really complain too much because I did after all go 2 years without getting it. I've got to say, in my experience of, the symptoms, it wasn't too bad. And, I've got no reason to complain. My parents a couple of weeks ago both went through it themselves, and they're in the 70s, so, I can only imagine how they felt. But hopefully we're over the worst of it, and it gave me, if anything, some time to chew over a few things, some important questions perhaps which you guys have had yourselves and asked. Before we do get into that, just want to say a huge big thank you to those few people that are supporting our efforts here at the observatory in keeping you informed of these anomalies and strange times that we're in right now. One being the magnetic pole reversal, a very unusual anomaly. Last fully went through the Earth a magnetic reversal around 780,000 years ago. I do find it strange because on average it used to go through a reversal every 350,000 years. So for some reason this time round it decided to go through a reversal much longer than it did in its previous history of cycles of reversals. We are overdue, just to give you an idea, 500,000 years, which is quite some time. So this makes it a very special magnetic reversal. The other thing that we're going through is a low solar output period, which has been lasting there for a good 35 years. And both the magnetic reversal and the low solar output deliver the same consequences in terms of effects of adding more cosmic rays to our upper atmosphere due to the weakened magnetosphere and the weakened sun's heliosphere. And of course that is modifying our climate, which for some reason isn't widely mentioned in mainstream media or by these organisations like NASA, NOAA and the European Space Agency. One of the things I wanted to discuss with you guys is just where we are right now on this cycle of 400,000 years, and we are at the zero end of the scale, and you can see that we have enjoyed probably the best times we're going to have before we start really entering now some serious testing times ahead of us. That is because the black line, if you see, when the temperature line surpasses the black line, we go into interglacial periods, which generally last between 12 and 15,000 years. We have come to the end of one, and we are not just at the end of one, but we are also 6,000 years into that end. So we've had the best of what we could possibly expect to enjoy in this glacial period, and now we've got the hard times. And that's why I think it's a good topic for debate on where we stand, how well we're prepared to go back through it as a species that has, in my view, yes, we've had technology a lot longer than 100 years, but we really have come along in heaps and bounds. I think you would agree, in the last 70 years with TVs, mobile phones, smartphones, computers, etc. We've really did very well in the last 60 or so years. If you compare that with the time we've spent in the interglacial period, the last 12,000 years, and we look at the fact that we've only in the last 60 years become technologically advanced, and where we are on the scale of going back into a glacial period, we all know where we stand and what that means right now. It means that we was given an opportunity, I believe, to overcome these cycles with technology, but we flaunted it. We just wasted the opportunity and the technology. When I look around in almost disbelief today, at open countryside, looking at these vast miles and miles and miles of electricity being transported on pylons, and I think to myself, how is that going to cope when we go back into a glacial period and there is many inches of ice building up on those pylons. How long will they, last before they overcome, the weight and snap? And as a result, we will see cities go off grid. And, when we see this on a large scale in countries all around Europe and above 40 degrees latitude on our planet, when we see this happening on a grand scale, we know the we know the writings on the wall for these cities, and there has been no physical attempt to, make sure that they can withstand, even the beginnings of a returning back into a glacial period, which might be accelerated. And it is my belief that that will be the case by our Earth also going through two other anomalies at the same time, the grand solar minimum and, the magnetic pole reversal. So, I just find it, really strange that no effort almost whatsoever has been set aside to ensure the continuity of any of our modern cities. Why is that? And then I asked the question, and I know what a lot of you are going to say. Of course, Gene, they knew about it. They're not the only ones in the know. They knew full well. But if that is the case, then there was just no effort made to sustain billions and billions of pounds, in fact trillions of pounds of infrastructure, as well as the lives that depend on those cities. Here in the UK, and this will be the same story for a lot of the world 60 years ago that was, that has recently benefited from technology increases and improvements and advancements. 60 years ago, people couldn't sell the houses in the rural areas of this country. They'd be lucky if they get £5,000 for one of these little cottages with a bit of land attached to it, because everybody was making a beeline to the city because there was ample electricity, there was ample gas, and it just meant the living standards was much easier in cities, so everyone went there. Everything, you had shops, you don't get these things in rural areas. Even today where I live, just in between Coventry and Birmingham here in the UK, central United Kingdom, I've got to travel 3 miles to the nearest shop. That's how bad it is. But people were selling up these cottages to go and live in the cities. Now, these properties that was being sold for £5,000 with a little chunk of land attached to them are fetching in the tune of some cases millions now. So that's how far we've come around about in a full circle. Nobody wants to live in the city because of the bad environmental air pollution. There's no peace. There's always noise. There's always sirens of police cars, ambulances, fire engines darting about. The pace of life is, something that's no longer desirable. People want to go back out to the countryside, but they're barred from it because they can't afford it. Simply, only a few people can. I mean, it doesn't mean that because I live in a rural area that I'm, wealthy or anything like that. I'm very lucky to live in a rural area where there are some social houses. So I just rent my property where I am now. But I'm just explaining, what the situation is for people now trying to get out of the city, because I can understand 100% why you'd want to do that. Just look what's happened in the last 24 hours with what Vladimir Putin has said he's about to do with Europe if they don't convert their currencies into rubles to buy his gas. He said, we're going to simply shut it off. This is not going to go down very well with countries like Germany that have 40% of their energy come from Russia. Of course, he's not bothered whether they convert it into rubles or not. He's just going to make it very difficult for him to do that. And I wouldn't be surprised by the end of the day if he hasn't already announced he's shut that gas off. What will that do to the industries at that point in Germany? You have any idea how many manufacturers manufacture cars in Germany? All your Mercedes, Audis, BMWs, etc. all come from there. And when they can't, power up them smelting factories to, produce their steels, then they're going to have no other choice but to shut the shop until they can get that energy from somewhere else. It isn't just isolated to Germany, it's the whole of Europe that is going to experience this. I think we're a little bit better situated here in the United Kingdom with North Sea gas and oil, although we do depend on other countries to top up our needs. But everywhere you look at it, it's a disaster. If you look at how the climate is really crippling the food production in Europe and the rest of the world right now, that's setting aside the war that's taking place in the Ukraine and the lack of the three major produce that come out of Ukraine. It's big trouble, and it's going to get worse. And I want to ask the question, because I've been pondering it. Do they really know? Are they that complacent now about money? Is it more important to them than the actual reality of serious consequences that this earth could go through on a whole, that they think that much of themselves, that the super yacht is more important than spending money on infrastructure to put these cables well beneath the freezing ground levels, the permafrost. Are they that stupid and naive to think that it's more important right now to have a super yacht at the cost of £500 million or maybe more? Is it more important to them? And I'd like your take on it. Do you really think they know what's going on and they've prepared? You think that these underground bases that we hear of, that they've created for themselves, are first of all for the purpose of them all going down there? I mean, do you have any understanding of what you'd need to take down there to maintain your technology, to maintain just continuity of government? You'd need armies, and how could you keep all these things quiet? Or do they even know these armies are going to be moved at a specific point in time underground? And how would those soldiers feel if they was going to go underground with their governments and the elite? How would they feel about leaving their loved ones? Could you keep something that secret? That's my question. And I'm starting to think this all over again. I'm starting to rethink that they don't know. They're not bothered. What they're more interested in is corruptive behaviour, waxing themselves rich. Because just look what's happening with energy costs around the world right now. Here in the UK, 54% increase today was announced on people's energy costs in the United Kingdom alone. That is going to have such a massive impact on people financially. We're seeing hyperinflation, but we've seen the cost of fuel go up as well, reaching all-time record highs. If just fuel goes up on its own, I'm talking the fuel that you put in your vehicles to support your logistics, if that goes up, then everything that is carried on them trucks goes up as well. So everything across the range will increase in price. Food, commodities, products that you buy, everything. And if energy costs increase, the car's going to increase in value. We've just got it just seems to me completely and totally all wrong. It doesn't seem to be any real leadership or strategy to deal with the up and coming events that we are going to be facing. And with 8 billion people starving on a planet, it's not going to be somewhere any of us would want to be in the vicinity of the majority of them, because we have seen what happens when there's nothing to eat. People turn on each other and start eating themselves. And we saw this behaviour only in the last 80 years with the blockade of Stalingrad. And that city was blockaded. No food could get in or out. People turned to cannibalism. Over 2,000 people in 1 year that they had caught had been charged with cannibalism. and then there was over 100,000 people every month dying as a result of fighting over food rations. You know, with all the things that we are presented with right here and right now at the time you are listening to me, you know, this behaviour will come back in the blink of an eye, a flick of the finger. And I know what you're thinking. It's impossible. You know, right now you've probably got a job and you're probably thinking of ways to offset all these extra costs of living, but they're going to continue to spiral from this point out of control because nothing is being done to address any of these issues. And there is things we can do. We're just failing as a whole terribly right now at trying to do something. I always believe, like, you know, in order for there to be an about turn, a complete 180 on the direction we're travelling, then, you know, humanity has got to face such a catastrophe that it threatens its own continuity of survival. And because we're so concerned the majority of times with just keeping ourselves going from week to week nowadays, you know, there is no affordability to expand that to others. And I do believe it will be at that peril that, you know, we will see in the coming years now, quicker than we ever have done, an acceleration into some really dark times. We've got no, as far as we're aware, you know, me and you have got no chance in trying to maintain continuity of the technology that we've got today, because even with my expertise in electronics, programming and stuff like that, you know, what is in a smartphone today is well beyond my capabilities of repairing. And, you know, the circuitry within there is thinner in some cases than a human hair. There is no chance. You know, you need the technology, you need the robots that built that technology, and you need to keep them maintained in order for you to keep yourself in a customary having mobile phones. This is what I'm saying. You know, do you really think that people have actually sat down and thought what they'd need to take into one of these deep underground bases? It would need to be more than just people. It would need to be more than just the ability to reproduce food. It would be the ability to keep the continuity of that technology that you've got at this point in time going. And that would not be easy, because at that point you are taking factories and, you know, cities of people underground, which I don't believe they have, you know, selected for that to happen, which is why I don't think that they really have clearly thought things through about what we're about to face. And it's not a case of whether it will or whether it's likely. This is something you can take to the bank. It is going to happen, and it is going to be the case. It's just a matter of when. And with the seen yet of any improvement with the grand solar minimum in any large number, you know, it doesn't look like, you know, there'll be less cosmic rays as a result of that. And with the magnetic North Pole still migrating, possibly going into those weak field lines within the next 12 months, you know, doesn't seem like there will be any less cosmic rays as a result of that in the atmosphere. And because of those two things alone, we are probably going to be accelerated into further climate chaos. And then we can take one last thing to the bank, and that is, whichever way you look at it and whichever core samples you choose to look at over the last 500,000 years, you will know exactly at what point in time we are at right now. And that is the end of an interglacial period. That could be the final nail in our coffin. We will have to see. Guys, a huge thanks for those that have been supporting us. There's a link down there in the description if you want to help us. And over the weekend I will sort out some of the magnetometer data that we've had sent from one of our superstars over in Canada. We'll get that up online for you. and we'll continue as we usually do, relaying the information as we get it, and hopefully have some more interesting topics. But for now, guys, you take care of your loved ones. As always, bye for now.